Hey everyone, it's Karen with Yes Please Paper Crafts, and in this video I'm going to be doing another Cricut Design Space tutorial, and this is part of course 301, Titles and Journaling, and it's lesson 3, Journaling in a Shape. And so for this lesson I did break this up into 5 parts. So if you would like to skip ahead to any of the parts, just go to the description below and click on any of the links to jump to that part of the lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with part 1, adding a shape. So I recently created a layout where I wanted to journal inside of a shape. It was an oval, and I thought about just writing with a pen, but my handwriting's not the best, and I wanted to write quite a bit, so I just thought, well, I'm going to use my Cricut because I know that I can create a shape and I can use a pen with the Cricut and just have the Cricut write it for me. It's going to look like someone wrote it, but it just won't be me. Okay, so I'm going to show y'all how to do this. I think it's super cool. You can use any shape. And so the first thing that we're going to do is to go over to the menu bar over here on the left hand side of Cricut Design Space, and we're going to click on Shapes. That's going to bring up this menu that's going to show us all of the different shapes available in Cricut Design Space. So you'll see that we have a square, a circle, a triangle, even a star or a heart. But what you don't see on this menu is a rectangle or an oval. And that's because you can make a rectangle from a square and you can make an oval from a circle. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and click on circle. That's going to add a circle to our project. Okay, we're going to be printing this out onto white cardstock. And so I'm going to go ahead and change the color of the circle to white. And to do that, we just need to go up here to where it has this little box with the color. I'm going to click that, and then I'm just going to select white as my color. Okay, now we have this circle, so how do we turn this into an oval? So what we need to do to turn the circle into an oval is to unlock the circle so that we can change the width and the height independently of each other. Because right now our shape is locked as a circle, and if we were to change the dimension of the circle by dragging this little arrow right here, if we click on that with our mouse and we drag it, we can make that circle bigger and we can make it smaller, but it keeps the overall same shape. Okay, so if we go over here and click on this lock icon right here, that will unlock the shape, and you'll notice that now we have 4 arrows on this icon, and that means we can change the height and the width independently of each other. So if I click on this and I drag, now I can make it tall and skinny or wide, and so you can turn that circle into an oval. Now I want this oval to be 2 3/4 inches by 4 inches, and it's a little bit of a challenge to get that to be exactly the size I want by dragging this little icon. So another way that you can change the width and the height in Cricut Design Space is to go up here to the top menu bar and just go ahead and type it in. And so we're just going to type in 2 3/4 inches, and then we'll type in 4 inches here, and that's going to change our I always do that when you're typing in this. Don't click off of it, type it in and then press the enter key, and then it will change the change that value. If you just type in a number and then you click off of it, it just goes back to the original number that was there. So okay, so we just want to press enter after you type in your width and your height. Okay, so now that we have our oval the right size, it's going to take us into part 2, adding the text. Okay, so to add our journaling, we need to add some text. And to do that, we're just going to go over to the menu bar here and click on text. And that's going to bring up this text box where you can just go ahead and type in your text. And I have some text already that I had started to type in, so I'm just going to paste that here just to save us some time. Okay, so once you have your text there, you can see that it defaults to a very large font, which is 72 points, and it's the Cricut Sans. So that is the default font in Cricut Design Space when you add in a new text box. So that's really large and it's really too big for our journaling box. And so we are going to have to adjust the size of the font. And also I want to pick a different font because I want one that is script and not just a plain font. Okay, so one of the other things that can be a little bit of a challenge when using the text boxes in Cricut is if you accidentally click off of the text box, it disappears. And so you might be wondering, how do you get that back? And so what you need to do is just click on the text, that's displayed there. And once you have this highlighted, you can double click and it will bring back up the text box where you can edit the text or add new text. Okay, so in my journaling, I did have multiple paragraphs, and you can make paragraphs by just hitting the return key a couple times and then typing in more journaling. So I'm just going to type in some more journaling. And you can keep doing that. I think I had the date there as well. So we'll just put a date here. And just so you can see, get an idea of how this is going to look once we put this journaling into our oval. Okay, so now that we have some text, it's multiple paragraphs. It's really large text, so we're going to need to do something about that. So let's go ahead to the next part, which is part 3, selecting a font. Okay, so to change the font in Cricut Design Space, you need to have your text selected, because when you have the text selected, you will see an additional menu that shows up here on the top part of Cricut Design Space. And this is where you select a new font. You can select a different style, font size, letter spacing, line spacing, the alignment, also whether or not you want it to be curved, and there's also an advanced menu for editing your text. Okay, if you do not have the text selected, let's just go ahead and click on our canvas, and now we don't have the text selected anymore. You can see that that whole menu just disappeared. So if you do not see the menu to select a different font, it's probably because you don't have your text selected. So let's go ahead and click on the text. Okay, so we're going to go up to the font menu and click on this down arrow, and that's going to show us all of the fonts in Cricut. But there are over 500 different fonts available in the Cricut Access library, so you may have a little bit of a challenge trying to find a font for your project. So I'm going to take just a minute and talk a little bit about the filters. So up here at the top, you can filter this list by system fonts, which is all of the fonts that are available and installed on your computer. And then you can also filter by Cricut, which are all of the fonts that are included in Cricut Access. You can also just type in the name of a font and search for the font that way if you know the name of the font you would like to use. And then there's also this additional menu over here. If you click on filter, you can filter by my fonts, which shows you all of the fonts that you have purchased or you already have access to. Because there are some fonts in Cricut that if you do select them before you make the project, it will want you to purchase those fonts. And if you don't want to see those, you can filter by my fonts. Okay, you can also filter by multi or single layer fonts. And then the one we want to pick is writing. If you filter by writing fonts, it will show you only the fonts that the Cricut uses to write with the pen. And these are special fonts in Cricut that look just like handwriting. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and select that one, and that's going to eliminate a lot of the choices. So unfortunately, Cricut does not show you a preview of what your text will look like with each font until you select the font. It does give you a representation of each font by showing you the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog." It does show you the numbers and some of the special symbols. But it can still be a little bit of a challenge to pick a font that will look good with your text because it doesn't show you all the symbols. Like for instance, it doesn't show you what the quotes will look like. It also does not show you some of the capital letters here, like a capital Q, a capital J, a capital Z, can all look very different depending on the font you have selected. So sometimes you just need to pick a font and try it out, and if it doesn't work out, just go back and pick another one. Okay, so the other thing that I want to mention here is that there are sometimes fonts that have multiple functions, and if you look up here underneath the font name, it will show you that this font is a multi-layer cutting font, and it's also a writing font. And then maybe this one here, a child year, is a single layer cutting font. It's also a writing font. And then here we have Adelaide, which is only a writing font. So you do need to keep that in mind when you're picking out a font. Even though we selected all fonts that are writing fonts, some of the fonts have multiple functions. So the font that I used in my journaling for my scrapbook layout was called Sweet Dreams. So let's go up here to the top and type in Sweet Dreams, and I'm going to press enter, and that will search for the fonts that have that name, and you can see it right here. And I'm going to click on that, and it's going to change my font to the Sweet Dreams font. Okay, so now we also need to make sure that this is a writing font. So I'm going to go up here to Style and click on this down arrow, and I'm going to change the style from regular to writing, and that's going to change it into a writing font. You'll also notice that it changed the operation from cut to pen, and so when we make this project, Cricut is going to ask us to put the pen into the machine so that it can write out this text. Now there's still some more things that we need to do to adjust the text, because you can see now that the text is overlapping. So we're going to need to do some formatting. So that's going to take us to part 4, formatting the text. Okay, so there's a few things that we need to do to format this text. The first thing we'll need to change is the font size. So typically when you're writing a letter to someone and you're using a word processing software, your font size is between 10 and 12 points. So 72 is a really large font. And you can see that even at 16 inches here in the Cricut Design Space ruler, it doesn't fit all of that text. So that's really large. So we're going to need to make this a little bit smaller. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just change this to 11. And then I'll press enter. And then you'll see that it changed all of our text to a much smaller size. Okay, so that we can read the text, let's go ahead and zoom in on this project. And there is a zoom tool down here on the bottom left corner, and we can just click on the plus sign until this gets bigger so that we can actually read the text. Okay, so there are two more things that we can do to change the spacing for the font, and that is the letter spacing, or the spaces between each letter in the word, or the line spacing, which is the spaces between each sentence. Okay, so let's start off by changing our line spacing because for some reason it's overlapping, and we're going to increase the line spacing until it's not doing that anymore. So maybe I'll just type in a number like, say, 3. Okay, let's try 8. Okay, and you can see that we're going to get more and more space between our lines here. Okay, so we also may want to adjust the space between our letters, and to do that we can just go to letter spacing, and since my letters are not touching, you can see here that there's space between the A and the R and the I. Let's go ahead and decrease the amount of space between the different letters, and that should make our words come together so that it looks more like it's a script font. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we've adjusted our spacing, the next thing we need to do is to move the text on top of the shape so that we can fit this text and wrap it around so that it fits inside of the oval. So I'm going to double click on this, and then we're going to go up to the first sentence, and I'm just going to go over to the word for, and I'm going to hit the return key, and that's going to move the text down to the next line. I'm going to keep doing that until I get all of this text wrapped around so that it fits inside of this oval shape. Now, one of the things I really wish Cricut had was the ability to be able to wrap the text, but it does not do that. So you have to manually just go in and wrap the text around so that it fits within the shape. Okay, so now that I have all of this text fitting inside of the oval, I can do a little bit more formatting, and so I'm going to go up to the line spacing, and let's try changing this to 11, and now that looks a little bit better, but it's still squished. Going to try 14, and that looks a little bit better. Okay, so now that we have that adjusted, the next thing that we can do is change the alignment, because inside of the oval, I think it would look better if it was centered. So if we click on alignment, we can click on center, and that's going to align the text to the center. And I think it looks a little bit better if you do that when you're working with a circle or an oval. And when you're working with a square or a rectangle, sometimes it looks a little bit better if you leave the alignment to the left. Okay, so now that we have our text formatted, that's going to take us to part 5, combining the text and the shape. Okay, so let's start off by zooming back out so that we can see the entire oval shape. And we're going to select both the text box and the shape. And to do that, I'm just going to click up here and drag across both of those. And that's going to select both the text and the oval. Now, once we have both of those selected, we can click on this alignment menu and then click on center horizontally. And that will make sure that our text is centered on top of the oval. Okay, so we have one more thing that we need to do before we can make this project, and that's to combine the text and the shape. But I want to first show you what would happen if we don't combine those together and we just try to make the project. So let's go up here and click on Make It, and it's going to load up the project, and it's going to show us the mats that are required to make this project. And you're going to see that Cricut wants us to load 2 mats. It wants us to load a mat where we can write out our text, and on the second mat, it wants us to load some white cardstock that we could cut out this oval shape. Okay, so that's not what we want, so let's go ahead and click on Cancel. And we still have both of these things selected. You need to make sure that you have both the shape and the text selected together. And then we're going to go down here to Attach and click on the Attach tool down here at the bottom in the bottom toolbar. And if you don't see this Attach tool highlighted, it means that you don't have both selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on Attach. And that's going to attach those 2 things together. Okay, so now if we go to Make It, you will see that it's only going to require us to load 1 mat. It's going to type out the text and then cut it out in an oval shape. Okay, so you can see this looks much better, and this is what we want it to look like when we make this project. Okay, so we're going to click on Continue, and then once the Cricut Design Space connects to the Cricut Maker, it will show us this menu here where we need to select the base material. I'm going to be using a white cardstock to cut this out, so I'm going to click on Cardstock. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do to make this project is we need to load our tools and material. So Cricut gives you this illustration that shows you what tools are required for this project. So we're going to load a black pen in clamp A, we'll load the fine point blade in clamp B, and then we'll put a piece of white cardstock onto our mat, and we're going to load the mat into the machine. Once we have all of our tools and materials loaded, we're just going to click on the Go button, and Cricut will write out our journaling with the pen and then cut it out into an oval shape. Okay, so I hope that this has helped y'all to learn how to create journaling in a shape. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment on this video, or you can also join my Facebook group for Cricut Design Space, and I have a link to join that group in the description below, and you can also post your questions there in the Facebook group. Okay, so that's all I have for this tutorial. Y'all take care, hope you have an awesome day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye now.